memories, too many memories.
Travis Smith hasn't been to his grandmother's house on J Street in Southeast San Diego in over a decade. As we walk towards the newly painted blue house, he stops.
Well, like I said, when I first walked up, it was just like, boom, I got hit with so many memories. This is my daddy's house when he was a kid, you know what I mean? So definitely, through the generations, this is home. It's always going to be home. It will always be my home.
But for 13 years, the now 37-year-old Smith couldn't go home. His name was put on a gang injunction, a court order that determined where he could and couldn't be. His grandmother's house was right in the middle of a restricted area. In 2006, when his name was added to the gang injunction, Smith was a member of the West Coast Crips. Years before, Smith had been convicted of gun possession, as well as drug possession and sales. But he says the crimes weren't gang-related, and he'd already finished his probation. Smith still remembers what went through his head when two gang officers knocked on his mother's door and told him that he was on a gang injunction.
How is this going to work? How am I not going to go to this store that I've been going to for 20-some years? How am I not going to go to this park that I've been hanging out at for, how? That was how.
The main idea behind gang injunctions is if you make it extremely difficult for gang members to congregate or live in a community, they'll eventually go away and the community will be better off. Smith says he understands the need to end gang violence and he doesn't make excuses about his choices. But he is among many who say the injunctions have harmed far more people than they've helped. People like his grandmother who passed away in 2010.
They did a number, but yeah, my family, not being able to see your grandsons. You used to seeing your grandsons out front barbecuing, eating, macaroni and cheese, and then next thing you know, you don't see them, and you're older. That's the American dream, right? To get you a house and have your grandsons and your kids dwelling around, right? Well, they took that from us because of you're a gang member.
Many law enforcement leaders have come around to Smith's way of thinking in recent years. San Diego County DA Summer Stephan began removing names from gang injunction lists 2 years ago. And in April, she announced that her office was ending all of the county's remaining gang injunctions. The change in Stephan's approach, however, has been slow. In 2019, she was against a recommendation by the city's gang commission to immediately end all injunctions.
So I may not act as quickly as somebody might like me to act, because I have a duty to take thoughtful, considered action to make sure that I don't have collateral damage.
She says the process of methodically reviewing cases for the past few years has changed her mind, even though she's still not convinced the injunctions didn't reduce gang violence during their peak use.
What I've learned is that you always have to be open-minded to change, and that things that worked in law enforcement years ago may be cast too wide of a net.
For Smith, the scars from being caught up in that net run deep, and they won't just go away because there's been a shift in policy. During the visit to his old neighborhood, he heads to Mullins Market and Liquor Store on the busy corner of Imperial and 30th. As he looks at the building where his former church used to be, 2 police cars drive by, and 1 parks across the street.
Every time I came over here, I had to be mindful that I can be stopped by the police because they know who I am. I always had to be mindful. This is the worst part. I'm not on an injunction. I'm not a part of a gang. And just standing right here, I still feel like, you know what I'm saying? Even seeing this police officer, that's what when I was talking about that trauma from being jacked up by the gang suppression, and this is it right here.
How do you feel seeing that police right there?
I thought he was coming to mess with us, to be honest with you. Thought he was coming for me.
Inez Corona says she hears experiences like what happened to Smith all the time. She's a therapist at Rise Up Industries, a nonprofit that works exclusively with former gang members who have been incarcerated.
You've been conditioned when you have so many of these negative interactions, right, that are oftentimes violent, frightening. You feel helpless.
Corona says it's important to address former gang members' mental health and re-entry into society.
Because it's not an individual problem, it's a community problem, and it has a ripple effect and impacts all of us.
Travis Smith wants to see programs like Rise Up Industries in his old neighborhood. He can't help but wonder what might have happened if he'd been given therapy instead of being placed on the injunction. Now a minister who's been sober for 14 years and the father of 4 girls, he says institutions that upheld gang injunctions have a part to play in rebuilding communities.
You got to come back, and you have to bring healing with you.
After we part ways, Smith will drive 20 miles to get to his current house. He's still undoing years of conditioning that kept him away from these places that used to be home. Cristina Kim, KPBS News.